Thank you so much for viewing this video. Today I'm going to read you the story of the Tales of Herloff that I wrote, and a huge thank you to Elliot Hawk, who illustrated every picture that you'll see in this. He did an amazing job, was wonderful to work with, and a huge blessing, and a great friend of mine too. So check out his stuff as well. Elliot Hawk, thank you so much. Couldn't have done this without you. If you're interested in getting a copy after the story's over, feel free to click the link below. But without any further ado, I'm going to read you the story of the Tales of Herloff, Gull's Quest. Written by Jon Forster, illustrated by Elliot Hawk. Once upon a time, in the kingdom of Herloff, there was a knight named Gull. Gull was new at being a knight. He did not have a lot of experience doing the things that knights typically did. He hadn't been in a real sword fight outside of training. Gull had just recently learned how to ride a horse, and he was still getting used to the weight and the fit of his armor. In the kingdom of Herloff, the king had made a custom of hand-picking individuals to be his knights. The king had a tremendous gift for picking knights that were great. The Knights of Herloff had many amazing victories, establishing a reputation for being the best in the world. When an individual was appointed as a knight, the king would commission the blacksmith to provide them with armor, weapons, and a shield that were custom made to suit them perfectly. Gull knew of the knight's reputation. He wanted to please the king and do his best. He didn't know why the king had chosen him to be a knight, but he felt honored and privileged to have the opportunity. However, in the back of his mind, Gull was constantly nervous that one day he may fail the king and ruin the knight's reputation. Because he was so nervous about failing the king, Gull constantly tried to outwork and perform better than his fellow knights. One day, an announcement was made that a dragon was attacking a village within the realm of the kingdom. All the knights were asked to go out and fight against the massive dragon to save the village. Gull put on his armor, strapped on his sword, and picked up his shield. He then mounted his pale white and speckled stallion named Drew and rode towards the village that was being attacked. As Gull traveled down the road towards the village, he came upon a merchant that caught his attention because he was selling weapons out of his wagon. Gull had a perfect sword that was custom made for him from the king, but at times Gull wondered if there was a better option. It wasn't always comfortable to hold and even made his arms tired because of its weight. Then suddenly he saw a group of peasants running past him toward the village in need of rescuing. He couldn't help but notice that the peasants all had the same kind of sword. He even overheard them saying to one another how perfectly lightweight it was and how they could hold it up all day because of the sword's perfect weight distribution. As he overheard the peasants discussing their perfectly balanced swords, his eyes glanced over the merchant's inventory of weapons, and he saw the exact sword the peasants had. Gull gleamed with excitement when he saw it and felt within him that he absolutely needed to have that perfectly balanced sword, and everyone was talking about it. When Gull asked the merchant the price of the sword, the merchant smiled ear to ear and replied, "For you, since you are a knight commissioned by the king, I will give the perfect deal. Instead of taking hard-earned money from you, all I request is an even trade. If you give me your custom-made sword that the king made you, I will provide you with this perfectly balanced sword. After all, you don't need two swords, and this one is perfectly balanced, lighter, easier to wield, and everyone loves having them. You don't want to be left out of the new popular trend, do you?" Gull thought for a moment. He knew that it was an honor to have his custom-made sword from the king, but his new sword looked better, felt better, and was the popular choice for all the people as well. How could it be wrong, he thought. Gull decided to make the trade with the merchant. The merchant beamed with excitement. Gull thanked him and then was quickly on his way to make up for lost time. As Gull rode along on his horse Drew, he admired the look of his new sword. Its bright silver finish sparkled in the light and appeared flawless to his eye. Suddenly, Gull's focus was jerked away from his shiny new sword as Drew bucked backwards. After a few persuasive tugs on Drew's reins, Gull finally was able to settle Drew back down. As he looked around to see what caused this unusual behavior, he noticed that directly in front of him was a caravan of mercenary soldiers with mirror-like reflective shields. Gull had never seen a shield that had such a bright reflection before. He then realized that those reflective shields had directed the sun's rays into Drew's eyes, which was the reason he bucked. Gull dismounted from atop Drew's saddle and approached the caravan of soldiers. As he got closer to the soldiers, Gull called out to them with a friendly greeting. Gull was impressed by how the soldier army all matched one another, unlike the knights that each had customized shields. As Gull began to conversate with them, he asked the soldiers why their shields were reflective. The mercenaries responded by explaining to Gull that where they came from, the materials to make them reflective are in abundance, and that they were specifically designed to battle dragons. When the dragon sees itself in the shield, it actually gets scared of what it sees and backs away rather than attack. Gull was even more impressed by this explanation. Prim, the leader of the mercenary soldiers, even offered to give Gull one of their reflective shields. When Gull asked how much they would charge for it, Prim told him that he could have it for nothing. This impressed Gull so much that he accepted the gift. Shortly after, he realized time was slipping by and he was on a mission to defeat the dragon. So he said his goodbyes to his new friends, mounted Drew's saddle, and was on his way. After traveling only a short distance, Gull realized he could not carry both shields effectively. They were preventing him from riding Drew properly. He couldn't even use his sword. Something had to be cast off. He thought for a moment about all the hard work the king's shield maker went through to make his personalized custom shield. The measurements and attention to detail on every inch of it was impressive. Then he was quickly distracted by Prim's words still ringing in his memory. "This is perfect for battling dragons. It is the most effective shield available." As Gull thought about his two options, he chose to go with what appeared to him to be the best choice, the popular choice. He parted ways with his custom-made shield as he laid it under a large oak tree and continued his journey with his new mirror-like reflective shield. After getting closer to the village that was being attacked by the dragon, Gull observed a small pub with a sign outside named Hero's Dwelling Pub. Gull remembered hearing several of his knight friends speak of this place. This was a place where old knights, soldiers, and peasants that had defeated dragons and accomplished great feats of courage hung out. It was common knowledge that if you would buy them a drink, they would happily tell you their stories and give you advice on fighting dragons. Gull thought to himself that he would be foolish not to get their insights and wisdom on how to handle the dragon up ahead, so he tied Drew up to the water trough and strolled inside. As soon as he went into the pub, an old gruff soldier instantly caught Gull's eye. The soldier scoffed at Gull and then asked him, "How can you even move in that clunky armor?" Gull responded by saying that it takes some getting used to, but it's not so bad. The old soldier replied, "I hope you don't plan on fighting the dragon in that. You will be far too slow." Gull didn't even consider having to move fast in the battle with the dragon. Gull asked the soldier what kind of armor is best for fighting a dragon. The old soldier said, "Well, if you buy me a drink, I'll tell you all about it." Gull pulled up a stool to the bar and signaled to the barkeeper to provide the old soldier a drink. The old soldier introduced himself as Ego and then began to explain to Gull that the best armor to use is made from dragon scales. It is lightweight, strong, and flexes with your movements so you can still be quick, unlike the heavy metal armor that makes you stiff and slow. Gull then asked Ego where he might be able to acquire such a rare armor, to which Ego leaned back and looked around to make sure no one else was listening in. Ego then leaned in towards Gull's ear and told him that he had a suit hidden away, but for him to part with it, Gull would have to make it worth his while. Gull asked how much he wanted for the armor. Ego whispered in an even lower voice that he didn't need any money. He was already taken care of with money. Instead, he said, "If you defeat the dragon, you must give me all the credit." See, in the kingdom of Herloff, most knights, when they accomplish a great victory, give the credit to the king. The king provided the knights with weapons, shields, and armor, along with training, their food, their horse, and even an allotment of money for their expenses. Because of all this, it was expected that they would give the king credit for the victory, because no victory would be possible without the king's support. Gull had to think about this offer for a minute. To take the king's credit from him was no small thing. The old soldier mocked Gull some more and said, "Hey, if giving the king all the credit for all the work you do is that important to you, you can just be on your way. But I bet the dragon burns you to a crisp before you even know what hits you." With that dreadful thought of being burned alive by the fiery breath of the dragon sinking into Gull's mind, he quickly responded to Ego, saying, "I'll do it." Gull was so afraid of the picture that Ego had painted of the dragon scorching him that he was willing to pay any price to prevent it from becoming a reality. Ego handed over the dragon scale armor and then returned to the bar. Gull quickly removed his armor that the king had given him and put on the dragon scale armor. He was then on his way. The dragon scale armor was more flexible and easier to move in. There was no doubt about that, he told himself. As Gull rode only a short distance further, he came upon the village that was being attacked by the dragon. He heard a shriek in the distance that sent chills shivering up his spine. Gull looked around but did not see any other knights, soldiers, or even peasants. All he saw was chaos and destruction throughout the village. Gull continued pressing forward, and he came to the opening of the cave that was at the edge of the village. The dragon must be in here, he surmised. As he entered the cave, he couldn't help but notice that it was brighter than he expected it to be. There were a series of mirror shields reflecting the light into the cave. He also noticed several piles of swords that looked just like his brand new, perfectly balanced sword scattered along the cave floor. The shrieks were getting louder the deeper that Gull went into the cave. Then suddenly he saw an eye open right in front of him. It was the dragon. The moment that he had trained for came down to this. Gull trembled with fear. His training began to flood back to his memory. He began to raise his shield and sword, but before Gull could raise them into attack position, the dragon swung the tip of its tail around with lightning-fast speed and struck the side of Gull's new perfectly balanced sword. The sword that was so popular and appeared to be the perfect sword to handle was bent in half like a wet piece of wood to form the shape of an L. Gull was now even more terrified. He let go of the now useless weapon he had so foolishly traded for and gripped onto his reflective shield with both hands. He then began to back away from the dragon. The dragon quickly chased after Gull, and then suddenly the dragon saw its reflection in the reflective shield. The dragon stopped and stared for a second, and then moved past Gull because it no longer saw him. It appeared in that moment as though Gull made the right decision to trade his shield in. However, as the dragon continued looking around confused, it began to spew his fire breath throughout the cave. As he did, the reflective shield became covered with soot. The dragon saw his reflection disappear from a distance and knew something was suspicious. The dragon approached Gull with a swift swat of its tail, knocked the now smoky and soot-covered reflective shield right out of Gull's tightly clutched hands. The shield flew out of Gull's reach, and now he lay face to face with the enormous and frightening dragon. With no sword or shield left within his grasp to use, the only thing remaining between him and the dragon was now his brand new dragon scale armor. Then Gull remembered that the old soldier told him that he would be fast enough to evade the dragon with his lightweight armor. As quickly as he could, Gull rose to his feet and began running in a zigzag pattern, just in case the dragon decided to use its fire breath. Gull couldn't believe it. He was moving fast enough that the dragon's first swipe towards him missed as he ducked underneath of the dragon's mighty paw. He continued to run. It appeared as though Gull may make it out of the cave alive, and then Gull turned his head to see how far away the dragon was. Gull was surprised to see that the dragon was no longer even behind him. He breathed a sigh of relief and then turned his head towards the cave's entrance, only to discover that the dragon had flown over his head and was waiting for him at the entrance of the cave. The dragon grabbed a hold of Gull and pinned him against the cave wall. Because Gull had the thin, lightweight armor on instead of his heavier, more protective armor, he was instantly knocked out upon the impact of being pinned to the wall. It appeared to be all over for Gull. Later, Gull awoke and began to look around. He didn't understand why the dragon would have let him live. As he browsed over the scenery, he did not see any evidence of the dragon. Then suddenly his eyes caught a glimpse of the very last thing he ever expected to see in the dragon's cave. It was the king. The king ran up to Gull, smiled at him, and greeted him by name. He then offered him his hand to help him stand to his feet. Gull was relieved and amazed to see the king here of all places. Gull instantly remembered that he was wearing the dragon scale armor instead of the armor the king had given him. Gull's excitement quickly shifted to embarrassment. He began to tell the king all that happened on his journey to fight the dragon. The king went on to explain to Gull that almost immediately after Gull was knocked out by the dragon, that another knight entered the cave with the armor, the shield, and the sword that the king had given him. That knight was easily able to defeat the dragon and gave the king all of the credit because the king had equipped him with everything he needed for the battle that he had to face. Gull was ashamed of the poor choices that he had made. He told the king that he would understand if he wanted him to resign from being a knight. Gull felt that he had embarrassed the king by his wrong actions, carelessness with the king's gifts, and being defeated by the dragon. He thought the king would never want a knight like him in his realm. The king replied to Gull, "You did act foolishly, yes. I wish you had trusted me more. I always want you to succeed. That is why I took the time to give you the very best of what I have. It may not always be easy to carry the weight of my gifts. At times, my gifts may make you feel uncomfortable or even stifled. My gift may not be the popular choice or the flashiest thing to have, but I have given it to you so that you can be the best knight you can be. I took the time to have your sizes measured, to custom make every square inch of my gifts for you, and I even picked you out of the crowd to be my knight, my representative. I urge you, for your own sake more than mine, choose to trust that I, as your king, know what you need better than you do. I know what battles will be coming up, and I will make sure you have everything you need to be victorious. You will never be able to prepare better than having what I have prepared for you. There is no need to chase after what is easier, what is more popular, or what may feel like a better fit." Gull apologized to the king, and then the king said something that Gull never expected to hear. The king said, "Join me in my carriage, Gull. Drew can follow behind. When we get back to the castle, I will have my blacksmith begin making you armor that you will need for the next battle." Gull was overjoyed in that moment to be welcomed back as a knight. Even though he didn't deserve to be, Gull committed from that day forward to trust that what the king had provided for him would always be enough for him. He no longer had to compare himself to others because he realized something that day. He realized that the king wanted him to succeed even more than he wanted to, and the king would never give him less than what he needed to win. Gull and the king grew even closer on that long carriage ride back to Herloff Castle. From that day forward, Gull had many successful missions simply because he stopped comparing what he had to what everyone else had and trusted his king would give him everything he needed to be victorious. The end. Thank you so much for watching this video of the story of the Tales of Herloff, Gull's Quest. It was a pleasure to share it with you. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed putting it together and writing the story. God bless you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.